Asia. Wow, Morocco. Wonderful. Really, really fantastic to see you all here. And I will just not be taking any more of your time. I'll just pass it on to Carol, and I hope you will all enjoy the session.
Thanks, Joanna. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful that you could join me. Thank you so much for sparing your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where it is. There's some wonderful countries named. I have to say a special note to Morocco, a place I truly love in my heart. So thank you very much for joining from there. South America, be it Guatemala or Brazil or Argentina or any of the other Ecuador, I've been fortunate enough to visit. Thank you for sparing the time. To all those other phenomenal countries I've never been fortunate enough to visit, thank you so much for joining. Now, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's going to be happening, the presentation is about 45 minutes, and then there's 15 minutes at the end for questions. And Joanna's going to be monitoring the chat, so we'll answer any questions at the end. Also, just to let you know that there will be, this webinar is being recorded, and within 2 weeks you're going to get sent the link to the webinar, a certificate, and also an electronic goodie bag. And I've put some ideas on a poster which is going to be coming out with that. Also, just to let you know, most of the pictures I've used in this presentation, I've tried to say where the source is if they're not a Pearson photograph, or I took some activities from a course book called Team Together. And I think there'll be a little bit of information about that. But this isn't a product sell. It's just that I could use those images because they were Pearson images. So thank you for joining me. I hope you had a chance to read the abstract. But what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to look at the 3 stages of learning. Now, this isn't how the brain uses information, it's how we get the learning in there. Because I think how the brain uses information is kind of a lot to do in 45 minutes. We're going to look at how to develop active learning, which is really important, 21st century skills that underlie exam activities. I don't know if it'll be a myth buster for you, but I hope you find it interesting. And then the value of digital. So that's roughly what we're going to cover. Now, there are a couple of polls where you can take part. And when we get to the polls, if you're on a computer, you can use your arrow to click on the answer you think. Or, of course, if you're on a touch screen, you can just touch. I will also have the questions on a slide as well. So I don't know what electronic device you're using to look at this session, but if you can't touch the screen, you'll still be able to guess along with the answers as well. Just a little bit about me. I don't know if you read the bio. I qualified as a primary school teacher in the UK in the very early 90s. I then worked in Asia for 11 years, in Japan, in Taiwan and in Hong Kong. And then I came back to the UK and worked for Pearson and Macmillan and a few other publishers. So I love ELT. I think teaching primary is possibly the best job in the world. And as we go through, I'll highlight why I think we all do such a great job, because we do. So without any more ado, if you do have a question in the chat, and Joanna will ask them at the end, you will get this, the recording of this session, so you can look at it again. And at the end, you can link to me if you want on LinkedIn as well, and I'll send any information if I've missed anything. So let's go. So start with the quiz. What have you learned that you've forgotten? So I'm going to read through the questions. So the question 1, that's a picture of some sandstone. What type of rock is sandstone? Is it igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic, or composite? So Joanna, if we can have the poll. Woohoo! So what type of rock is sandstone? Is it igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic, or composite? And it's only for fun, so if you don't know the answer, don't feel bad. And if you want to guess, I don't mind. All right? Right, question number 2. And we need to go back to the picture, Joanna. Right, there's a picture there. What kind of a dinosaur is this? I'm going to put my specs on because I can't read these days without my glasses on. Is it a Triceratops, a Stegosaurus, a Tyrannosaurus, or a Diplodocus? So what type of dinosaur is that? Answers are a Triceratops, that's A, Stegosaurus, that's B, Tyrannosaurus, that's C, or Diplodocus, that's D. And question number 3, Johnny, can we just have the slide again for 1 second? There's a picture of a distinguished chap. Who is it? A, Mozart, B, Bach, C, Beethoven, D, Mendelssohn. Now, I hope those of you that can are having a go at trying to guess. If not, just play in your head, it's fine. Now, do you want to know the answers? All right. Are we okay to do that, Joanna? Can I give the answers? I'll give the answers then. Oh. Bye. Come on, a few more could vote than that. All right, and I'll tell you the answers. So, back to the answers. Question 1. That type of stone is actually sandstone. And that's because, of course, it's built up of sediments made of layers. So that was answer B, sedimentary. Question number 2, what was the kind of dinosaur? It was answer D. It was a Diplodocus. And actually, the picture is a dinosaur called Dippy, which is quite famous from the Natural History Museum, which is where I got the picture from. And the final one, number 3, the famous composer was answer C, Beethoven. Now, why did I do that? Well, actually, all 3 of those questions appear in the Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2 learning material for children in England. The sandstone question appears in Key Stage 1. The dinosaur question appears in a few levels, but I put that in because at church we have a 5-year-old boy who is quite frankly driving me mad about dinosaurs. And he knows every dinosaur by name. He knows what it eats. He knows where it lives. I mean, he knows them all. And then Beethoven's actually off a Key Stage 2. So that's a Year 5, Year 6 activity. Now, I am sure that you, as well as me, learned all of these things when we were in school. But do you know what? I haven't got a clue what kind of what group of stones sandstone sat in. And I've got to confess, I had to look up the dinosaur as well. But I did know Beethoven. And that's because when we learned it, we weren't actively involved in the learning unless we were really interested in rocks or dinosaurs or Beethoven. So if that's the kind of learning that we can forget, what's the kind of learning that we can remember? So all of us as adults will have probably had to learn a new address. You may have had to work hard on the postcode, but our new address we've learned. Most of us, when we get one of these hideous things, a new phone, we have to learn how the phone works, where the apps are and all the rest of it. And lots of us have to learn, and we keep on learning new words all through our lives in our own language. And if we've studied a foreign language, we quite often learn new words in that. And that's really good. But I've got a question for you. Can you remember, unless you moved a lot as a child, can you remember the address of the house that you grew up in? The answer is probably yes. And I know that with new apps and new information, we have to learn lots of things. But I mean, in England, we used to have a monetary system which changed in, I think it was 71 or 73. I can still count in pounds, shillings and pence, even though it's an entirely useless skill, because that's how I learned to count money first. And as far as language, there are lots of words which are now redundant in our own languages, but you can still use them. I can still define to you what a sixpence is, but we don't have a sixpence anymore in England. we've got information in our brain that we actively learned, and that stays there for quite a long time. So the question is, why does it stay there? Now, there were a couple of researchers, their names were Fitz and Posner, and in 1967, they created this 3 stages of learning. It's been used and adapted by many other people since. And they were really interested, particularly in how athletes could be helped to improve their performance. But what they found was the stages they talked about are true for lots of other subjects, and language learning is particularly one of them. So what I'm going to cover is these 3 stages and what we do as primary teachers, which is really essential. I don't know about you, but sometimes primary school teachers, people think all we do is play with crayons and have a good time. And actually, we build the foundations for every other thing that child will do. We do one of the best and one of the hardest jobs in education, and I'll not have anybody say anything against us. Primary teachers work really hard because we have to give our students the cognitive, the new information, and make those connections. And that's the first stage I want to look at in a moment. We then have to help them with this new information to start to build associations so they can use that information in different settings and for different things. And then hopefully the aim will be that our learners will become autonomous. And this day and age, we are understanding that students have to be more autonomous, they have to be more responsible for what they choose to learn throughout their life. They have to be more responsible and autonomous in how they develop their skills, whether it's for different jobs that come up, different life situations, all the rest of it. So an autonomous learner is really one of our big goals. Now, as Joanna said, this is all related to exams. So how do these 3 stages tie into exams? Well, the target learning that we want students to learn, the vocabulary sets, the grammar, how to structure a sentence with a capital letter and a full stop, how to compose a short story with a beginning, a middle and an end, all that lot. That's really the cognitive bit. That's the new information that we as teachers very often share. I know some parents do too, and I'm not decrying what parents do, but teachers do put a lot of work into this. But then, as we help students and we guide them towards making predictions, that's when the associative learning comes in. So at first, for young learners, if you're going to talk about food, you might show them a table with food on it and all the rest of it. Associative would say, if I held up a picture and it said shop, some students might say it's a greengrocer's shop and list fruit and veg. Some students might say it's a clothing shop and list jeans and dresses and socks and jackets and things. But they can associate one picture with a variety of word groups because we've done our job. And then finally, we get to autonomous learning. And this is where in the exam, it's really important. I taught a lot of students towards getting the Cambridge exams, and the Cambridge exam is great. But I have to say, I do like the Pearson test of English for young learners. Now, I know the first part is very similar to all of them. You've got the listening part followed by the listen and write, the read and write, read and match the words, read and write in the gap fill, and then write 5 sentences. And that's a pretty standard English exam. But I love the board game concept because it takes children out of the normal exam setting. A game is always fun, and if they're competitive, then they'll really enjoy it. And then from what they've looked at and the kind of questions and answers they've done in the board game, they will then have to talk on a subject. And that's where this autonomous learning is really important. If the student feels they can talk about something, whether it's a favourite pet or a pop star they like or their favourite meal, then it builds their confidence and it reduces the amount of anxiety. And that's why these 3 stages of learning are so important. So how do we get students into that phase of becoming active learners? I'm going to show you in the next slide, and like the game Hangman, there's some dashes and there's 2 words, and I'm going to see if you can guess what the 2 words are. So I'll just explain the pictures in case somebody's looking on a really small screen. The top picture is a picture of a motor car and all the fumes coming out of the exhaust. The second picture is a picture of a shovel with a load of coal on it, for a coal fire. And the bottom picture, which I know is a little bit hard to see, is logs that have all been cut down in a forest waiting to be transported. So, what 2-word answer do you think the topic that the students are going to be talking about is? And I'll give you a second to have a think. You can't type in on this, but if you type in the text chat, Joanna will tell me if anybody guesses, and there's the right number of dashes for the letters. So what topic do you think I might be introducing to my students? And Joanna, if anybody has any guesses, can you tell me what they are? Well, I don't know if you guessed it, but the theme we're looking at, if this was my class, the theme we'd be looking at would be global warming, which is a pretty old chestnut these days. So we've seen the pictures. I've got the brains thinking about global warming. The next thing is basically, what's the wrong word? So the words I've put on the screen are pollution, climate change, gases, forests, coal fire, radio, hotter, planet. Which of those words is a wrong word? It doesn't fit in the group. In the chat, if you want to type the word, then do so. If not, just say it in your head and see if you're right. I don't think it's very hard. This is really tying into the odd one out in the exams. And of course, the odd word out is radio. It's the one that doesn't belong with a thing about global warming. So by giving students a bit of a brain job to think about as they do the activity, we're starting to build the start of active learning. Now, based on that, I might then give them this kind of list of words where we've got the gases that lead to pollution that make global warming, cutting down forests lead to global warming. So this is just a bit of a map as to how we would normally do a story. Excuse me, I'm only drinking water, by the way. But then you might say to them, all right, I know this is English class, but we can do some science work in our English class. So, cause and effect. I wouldn't say that to my youngsters, but to anybody year 5, year 6, I would. Well, I'd say, let's try and write like a scientist and explain why global warming isn't very good. And so I might ask the students to write something like this. Now, this morning I mentioned it. I don't think anybody would have come back for a second session today. So, but if you were on this morning, forgive me for repeating myself. But I think sometimes people are really critical of English language teachers who decide to do CLIL. And we might do a maths activity using a clock or working out money. This is a science activity. Sometimes you might do a history type activity. But I actually think that these activities are CLIL. I agree, you could do a lot more. But with young students who've got limited vocabulary and limited world experience, I think this is a touch of science in the English class. And I won't have anybody say anything against it. We ask children to construct this kind of answer, and this is a scientific type of answer. It's given a cause and effect. It's not a normal story, once upon a time, happily ever after. And this is where CLIL can help, because by bringing in different topics, we can actively engage their brain. We know some students like science and things like that. Other students like maths. Other students like to work in groups. Other students like to work alone. And I don't think that saying it's got to be some sort of full-blown CLIL helps. I think this kind of thing, we're looking at global warming, let's pretend to be scientists and write a report, is CLIL in action. And I won't have anybody say anything against it, but it's actively involving their brain and it's helping them to remember. And that's really important. So from this, we then might go on to something that you could say is a bit of an old chestnut. We might go on to talking about animals. Good old ELT, we do loads of animals, but we're tying it back to global warming. So we've already seen in the previous one, global warming is making the ice caps melt. So would it affect a polar bear? Yes, it would. You saw from the picture of all the logs that have been cut down, so the forest has been taken away. Will that affect a panda? Yes, it will. And of course, we all know that gorillas are losing their habitat. So we can talk in a scientific way, even in an ELT class, about what's going on. And as I said, these images are actually taken from level 5 of Teen Together, where students are asked to talk about their favourite animal and why. So we're giving students the information into their brain. Now, what you can do to push this forward is to ask them to make a connection. So you might say, name one more animal that you think would be affected by global warming. And they might come up with, if you live in England, we're losing a lot of woods and forests. This behind me, by the way, is a poster. I don't actually live in a forest. But we're losing lots of forests. So lots of owls and bats and things are losing their habitat. As we all know, there's lots and lots of places where the rivers and things are drying up. So frogs and things are losing their habitat because of our deforestation. So that's when you can open it up and give students a little bit more chance to say what they think. Now that is starting to build association because they're putting in something. You're guiding them, but you're not telling them. So this site is really easy to find. I'm sorry, I thought I'd put the actual thing on, but I obviously cropped a bit to that. It's actually called gamesinenglish.com. It really is that hard. And this site is great for doing what we do with flashcards. It gives students activities. So the food one, which is on there, it says Bill wants a sandwich. And on the side is pictures of food, and you drag the sandwich to Bill. And then it says Mary wants some peanuts. Again, you find the picture of the peanuts, you drag them to. And there's nothing wrong with this. I'm not slagging this site off, but this isn't autonomous learning. This is really cognitive learning. The students have a vocabulary set, the options are controlled, good practice for exams because they're learning word groups, but they can't step outside the prescribed answers. Now, it might be that Mary wants a sandwich and Bill wants some nuts, but actually maybe Maya or Valerie or whomever, maybe she fancies an hamburger. If that's not there, they can't choose it because this is really looking at cognitive input, and we want to move students past cognitive so they start to get associative. So, what a famous chap, Steve Jobs, said, creativity is just connecting things. Now, there's been a lot of research done recently, and what it's found is that better brain connections really do help with thinking skills. And this is where we move from the cognitive learning point into the associative and the autonomous. And that's really where students can start to build exam skills. So, that one. So, the associative stage, like I said, teacher guided. So, in lots of exams, you find look and find, what's missing questions, word association questions, activities where they have to talk about. They all happen in exams. They also happen in the world in general, and they also happen in the English class. So by helping students feel more confident at the associative stage, we can help move them towards becoming autonomous learners and more confident in exams. So what do I actually mean by that? I've got a few what you might call brain teasers for you. Now, they are done as polls as well, but I'll read through the slides and you can see what I mean. So, I hope you find these fun. So, oh, wrong way, sorry. So, Can you complete the last 3 letters of question 1? So, thanks, Joanna. And the poll hasn't come up, but never mind. So, yes, it has. Right. So, complete the last 3 letters. J, F, M, A, M, J, J, A, S, what? Answer A, F, M, A. Answer B, F, F, M. Answer C, O, N, D. And answer D, S, J, or F. Which do you think is the 3 letters that complete that? If you can, touch the screen and have a vote. If not, just guess in your head. I understand that everybody's going to be on a computer. Okay. Question 2. And this is also, if you can only see one thing, if you slide down, you'll see the second one. So again, thinking logically, what's missing? Eyes, ears, hands, feet, what? Answer A, head. Answer B, legs. Answer C, nose. Answer D, fingers. Again, have a guess or type it in the chat if you aren't able to touch the screen or click on an answer. And question number 3. Which word do you associate with flowers? Answer A, pot. Answer B, pan. Answer C, whisk. Answer D, grater, as in the thing that you stick cheese through, grater. So which answer do you think? All right, Joanna, shall we reveal the answers then? Right. Do you want to go back to the slides, Joanna, and I'll just go through the answers? Right. Well, the first one, the answer is C, because it goes January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So it was answer C to number 1. Question 2, which body part is missing? I've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands, 2 feet, and 2 legs. So it was B, legs. And question 3, which word do you associate with flowers? Pot. Now, of course, if it'd been flower, F-L-O-U-R, then the odd answer out would probably have been greater, because you can't grate flour. But what's happening there? What you're actually doing is using what a lot of people have called 21st century skills. There's no real mystery about these, but what you do there is to recognize what's going on in a sequence or to think about word association. That's critical thinking in action. When it comes to looking to find something that's missing, or look and find something hidden in a picture, or spot a mistake, that's a problem-solving activity quite often. The creativity, as I said in the global warming activity, that might be to write a story or show you results. But this is something which the teacher can guide, but we want the students to produce themselves. And of course, one of the most complicated areas, especially for our young learners who may be new to learning in English, is talking about something. But these 21st century skills pretty much underpin what's there in the exams. They're going to be asked to recognise a sequence of possible activities and circle an answer. For example, John went into the shop, he bought some bread for $10, he bought some milk for $15, and he bought an orange for $5. How much did he spend? That kind of thing, recognising what happened and what it works out at. What's missing is quite often included in exams where students have to spot a mistake or find something that's different in a picture. Obviously, mostly they have to write a short story, 5 or 6 sentences quite often. And communication, be it Cambridge exam or the Pearson test of English for young learners, there's always a talking component. So by getting students into doing these activities, we are actually helping them to go down the correct path for the exams. So one of the pictures, and I apologise if you're looking on a very small screen. So this is taken from Teen Together, and what this actually is a look and find, and it's some people at a children's small zoo, animal centre, and they're looking at all the animals, and you go around and you read the cartoon, but then the last one, the cat and dog are standing guard over some eggs, and it asks you, what do you think is in the eggs? Now, I appreciate if you're looking on a very small screen, it'll be hard to see, but I'll tell you the answer because it's a bit difficult. If you look at picture number 2 very carefully, you'll see that just under the first speech bubble, there's a little house that you see just to the right of the dog in picture number 6. And if you look in that actual pen, you'll see there's some tortoises. So what's in the eggs? It's tortoises. So this is asking students to actively look on the page and find the answer. You have to kind of use a bit of spot the difference or find the similarities, but it engages students to want to have a look and see. And this is really active listening, active looking, and starting to associate what you see in one picture with what you see in another, and animals that might have eggs, and tortoises do. As well as that, there's also activities which help improve listening skill. So I'm going to give you a list of 6 words, and I'm going to give you afterwards 10 seconds to try and remember them all. So here are the words: monkey, house, flowers, burglar, milk, fridge. I'll repeat them once more. Monkey, house, flowers, burglar, milk, fridge. You've got 10 seconds. See if you can remember them. Right, how many did you get? When I tried it on my husband, he got 5. Right, so listening itself is quite difficult, but one of the things we can do to help students associate what they're hearing is give them a word list and either get them to imagine a picture with a word in it, or for younger ones, I would give them a picture. So I'm going to do the same thing again, but with some different words. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see the word in the picture. So the 6 words are shadow, car keys, curtain, police, TV, jacket. I'll repeat them once more: shadow, car keys, curtain, police, TV, jacket. Again, you've got 10 seconds to try and remember them all. Okay, now how did you do? I'm hoping you might have done better on the second one. But one real test is, and I don't know what time it is where you are, maybe at the end of today, or if it's getting quite close to evening, maybe first thing tomorrow. See if you can remember what colour the jacket was that the girl's wearing and where the police are. And I can almost guarantee tomorrow morning, if you can think of it, you'll feel, oh, it was a yellow jacket and the police were outside the door. Why? Because the picture helps you to associate the words, and you are making connections in your head yourself. I didn't tell you to look at the shadows in the window on the first floor, in the yellow house on the picture. You looked for it and found it, and that's associating the words with this. Another thing you can do, and this again comes from the same course book, is name one thing. Rather than me telling you what words might fit, ask students, what's one thing you can touch with our hands, or with our fingers, or with our feet, or with our faces? And have a think. What would you say is something you can touch with your hands? What do you think you can touch with your fingers? What about your feet? And what about your face? I asked my husband, and he said, what can you touch with your hands? A ball. What can you touch with your fingers? A ball. What can you touch with your feet? A ball. And I said, you can't touch that with your face. He said, no, water. But lots of potentially different answers. Now, those answers might be, with your hands, you can touch food or knife and fork or toys. Students are starting to associate a skill, a sense, and a body part, and the noun for something, all in one activity. You've given them cognitively, you've taught them the words for different toys, you've taught them different words for body parts, you've taught them the words for the senses. Now they're starting to associate them and put them together themselves and come up with their own answers. And that's a really exciting step, especially for primary teachers who are teaching English to students. When they can start to do that, they are starting to make associations. Don't decry the hard work we do. It might be little and it might be small, but they can make those associations. Why is this important? Well, there's a transition to when learning really becomes autonomous. And that's when they've got this comprehension of all the cognitive things, all the words we've given them that are in their brain. And then from their memory, they start to associate and build different words and different groups into answers that they want to give. Hopefully, they can then apply it to become autonomous learners. So sat in an exam, if they get shown or asked to talk about a picture of their favourite animal, they can do it. So there was these importance of autonomous learning points come from the South Asia Journal, and I credited the source on the slide, so I don't know if you get the notes, but what did they found? They found that autonomous learners have the capacity for critical reflection. Now that's a little bit of a big word for young learners, but they do know when they can change and adapt what they need to do. It motivates risk-taking to communicate in the target language. And this morning I said I taught for 11 years in Asia. And one of the things that we struggled with was, if I said to one student in Japan, what's your favourite fruit? And they said an apple. Basically, nearly all the class would say their favourite fruit was an apple. Now, one of the things I love, and I've had the privilege of going to South America, is I love the fact that people are really happy to try and communicate, especially children. And if you ask one child what fruit they like, they'll say orange. The next one might say a banana. The next one might say an apple. The sentence may not be perfect, but they are so energetically, superbly keen to communicate. And it is such a joy as a teacher. I love my Japanese students. I truly did. I spent 6 years in Japan and they were wonderful. But this willingness to communicate and risk take is something which different cultures take in a different way. But the more confident a student is that they can associate and build words and get them out, the more prepared they are to take risks. It says it promotes out-of-class learning, and this really is going to be one of the key skills moving forward as the world changes and develops. They need to be able to take control of their own learning. It strengthens confidence and enables them to make decisions about strategies. Now, strategies sounds like a big word for primary school children, but if they have to learn for their own exams and revise at home, they need a strategy. So yes, it's at a low level, but it's still something students do. Here are some autonomous learning examples. The first one is a class were asked to come up with ideas about plants, which the teacher wrote on the board, and then one group did a spider map or a mind map, and that's great. That's one way to think about things. And getting students used to quantifying and thinking about what different answers there could be is really good in building association. The middle one with the little house on it is what I call a mobile map. You know, like in a baby's room, you have the mobile with all the little furry animals that goes round. Well, that's this sort of idea for planning a story. But it's also really great for whenever students have to talk about a picture. And as I said, the Pearson test of English for young learners and the Cambridge exams have spoken parts. And if a student's shown a picture, we often talk about the fear factor. But I like to talk about the point of panic, when all of a sudden the student kind of goes, I don't know. And then they start to panic about, how do I talk about this? But this mobile shows really the 3 ways in which you can start to think. So if it's talk about your favourite animal, what does it look like? What features has it got? The next part, you might talk about what it likes to eat, if it's a cat or a dog, what it likes to eat. And the third thing might be the kind of things it does that makes you laugh, or where you take it for a walk. The same thing, what it looks like, what it likes to do, the places it goes. Could work for a pop star. What does the pop star look like? What songs do you know that they've sung? Have you ever seen them at a concert or on telly in a show or something? What was it like? You can use this 3-point idea to talk about lots of things. But as students get used to doing this, when they see a picture in an exam or are asked to talk about something, in their brain, just say, think about what you'd organise it as, and they'll talk. And then the third one is actually a diagram. This really is back to our CLIL, back to our science. Really, it's about forces. It's a physics lesson, but it's done as an English lesson, push and pulls. There are a few words and a lot of pictures, but the student has conveyed the information in a way which is important to them. Now, earlier on, I showed you gamesforenglish.com, and I said that they're really great games, but they really only do the cognitive learning. There are lots of games out there which actually require more autonomous learning. Now, I'm not saying that we should encourage kids to play Death Kill 3 or Assassin's Creed or any of them, because they are quite violent. But there are lots of very good computer games. Now, some of the courses that Pearson publish do have games with them. And these give students the chance, once they go into the game, to choose which direction they want to go, who they want to speak to. Do they want to go to this world or that world? Do they want to collect the points or not collect the points? Do they want to change how they look? They get lots of independent choices, and that's really one of the key foundations to autonomous learning. So I'm just going I'm skipping that slide because we tried it this morning and Bayek, it didn't work. So I'm just skipping that slide. So autonomous learning, why is it essential? I said that you might think what's on this slide is really hard for young learners, but it's not. Young learners can plan their own study for exams. They can look at what they know and review it. They can find out what they think they need to know and ask you. So this is just something which can expand and get more developed as students get older. Now, I wanted to have a quote from David Noonan, because he's David Noonan, and I thought that this 5-stage development to autonomy ties in really well with what we've covered. The first stage that David Noonan says is awareness. Learners are the recipients of information, and that's the cognitive, active learning bit where we give them loads of information in their brain. The next is involvement, where learners review and select among the options given, and that's where these associations start to come in as they build from the vocabulary sets and all the things that we've helped them to learn. And then 3, intervention. Learners set their own goal. This is where they start to become truly autonomous. Creation. Learners are the inventors, originators, and creators of their own goals. We might start in a small way with you create your own piece of writing and do it like a scientist. But it's a tiny step on a footpath that leads them to greater things. And then finally, transcendence. Learners identify their own interests. This is something definitely from year 5 and 6 at primary, I think, is reasonable. Why is it so important? Because, as Little said, success in language learning is significantly influenced by learner autonomy. And how much progress a language learner makes indicates how much he or she can take charge of their own learning. So, just to close, all the examples that I used from course books I took from Team Together. It's a Pearson book. This is a Pearson presentation, so I knew I could use them. And unless I stated otherwise, all the pictures came from Pearson as well, with the exception of where I credited it. So, thank you very much for joining us. There are lots of other presentations. We've got about 14 minutes on my clock still for questions. So, Just to remind you, this has been recorded. If for any reason you would like to watch it, you're welcome to. There'll be a certificate sent out to you within 2 weeks electronically, and an electronic goodie bag with information, I believe, about Team Together, and a poster that I put some ideas onto for little activities for games. So, Joanna, have we had any questions that I can answer in the last few minutes? Well, can I just say to the 720 people who are online, thank you so very, very much for joining in this session. I can see lots of wonderful Cyrillic, so I'm guessing we have lots of people from Russia, which is fantastic. As I said, I definitely saw some Spanish-sounding names, so I'm guessing they're South America. Joanna, have we got any questions that have come through? Yeah, of course. Of course. Excuse me, jinking back. There you go.
Oh, there is. What kind of method do you advise for young learners? That's the question that popped.
Which method for what?
I think that person, Juan, is asking what kind of method do you advise for young learners? As I understand, it's what method of teaching? As I understand the question, unless Juan, it's something else. And how students speak more fluently?
I think this is really where the 3 stages of cognition, association, and autonomy come in. We've got to give them the words. If they don't know the words, they can't use them. So I mean, you say drill and kill. To be honest, I think sometimes drill can be fun, but you need to work it out. So if I was doing a drill about things in the kitchen, I'd bring them in and I'd hold them up, and we might make a stupid rhyme about it. But the idea would be to get the students thinking about the words and what they actually relate to. Later on, a week, 2 weeks later, depending on how many lessons I have the students for and how much time each lesson is and how many students in the class I've got, I might then do, you know, the game that we've all seen to play where you've got the tray with 10 items on it, and then you hide one, they've got to guess it. I might start with that, but then I might say the following week, I've got 6 items on the tray. What other 4 items would you have that would fit with this group? And I would allow the students to start adding in their own and say, I would put a banana on the tray. So they're drawing information down. I think the other thing is just letting students make mistakes. You know, when I've learned Japanese, I can only apologize to any of the Japanese people I ever spoke to in my 6 years in Japan, because Lord above, my Japanese was just rough, but I could communicate. The same when I've been to France. I can only apologise to the French people who've had to hear my awful French, but don't be frightened to make mistakes. And I think sometimes as teachers, we're very worried about that. If you do Pearson Test of English for Young Learners, there's a marking rubric, and it shows how students are marked. And one of the interesting things is a 3, they will still get a 3 even if they make mistakes, because the communication is still clear. And I think perfect communication is sometimes an enemy of getting communication across. And I think that's why Pearson Test of English for Young Learners is really good, because if you look at the marking rubric, even if they make mistakes, if the meaning is clear, they still get a 3 out of 5. And I think that's what teachers, we need to help them. Even if it's stumbled and there's a few missed words, we can help to correct them. It's getting them making that association and talking.
We have a few more questions, Carol. Mm-hmm. So how can we use storytelling for teaching language autonomy?
Sorry, can you teach that, John? I couldn't hear all of it.
How can we use storytelling for teach language autonomy?
Oh, brilliant question. It's fantastic for it. If you divide up a story format that they know, so it might be, say, we're going to make a different story for Goldilocks. She didn't meet the 3 bears. Who did she meet? then you can get the students to write their own version of what happens to Goldilocks or any other fairy tale character. For factual storytelling, there's absolutely no harm. I love David Attenborough. I think he is possibly the world's best scientist. But getting to tell a story like Sir David Attenborough does about an animal. You know, this is a polar bear. He lives in a cave. He goes hunting with his mummy. He finds fish. That's storytelling, but get them to do it. So if we were doing a thing on global warming, get them to say the story of an animal that's affected by global warming like that. Storytelling is brilliant for association or autonomous learning.
We also have a question from Facebook, because we are live on Facebook. How many questions or reflections do you think that are okay in a web quiz?
Well, I'd say 2 slides spread amongst them, because that's what I've just done. I think enough to keep people interested and hopefully make it fun. I mean, at the end of the day, most of us are sitting in our houses with COVID-19. We're not seeing each other. I think if it makes it fun and a little bit light, give it a go. But don't overdo it, because if you can't take part for whatever reason, they're a bit boring.
And one more, we have quite a few of them. What's the most interesting homework we can send to them to keep the autonomous learning?
Oh, I'm assuming this is during COVID-19, is it?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Oh, that's a really difficult one. I mean, there's so many fun things you can get students to do just in their own home, even if they haven't got a garden or anything like that. They can write about if I was the cat or the dog or whatever pet they either have or would like to have, what would I think's going on now with COVID-19? You know, Sammy the cat sat in his basket and couldn't understand why everybody was still in the house. He liked to have the house to himself between 8 in the morning and 4 at night. But do you know the humans were there all the time? That's an activity you can get them to do, because it's a story and all they're doing is possibly given a chance to explain how they feel about COVID-19, but through either a pet they've got or a different pet. Or, for example, talk about, you can do lots of imaginative stories. So if the 3 bears came to your town or your house now, what do you think they would do? What would the story be? So instead of Goldilocks going, I like the Goldilocks story because it's got lots of different opportunities to increase new words in it, but get them to do that. Or, of course, you can just get them to try and find a list, to write a list of 10 stationery items. Can they find them in the house? Write a list of 7 vegetables. Have you eaten them all this week? All those kind of things are really easy.
So we have another one. Do you recommend to be eclectic and combine different methods?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's what we do. This is really where autonomy comes in, doesn't it? Sometimes you learn things by rote, like learning the postcode to a new house. I have got to just get it in there. Other things you learn by practicing. I made hummus today for the first time because we only go to the supermarket once a week. How did I learn it? I watched a video, which is one learning style. And then, because I didn't have half the ingredients, I stuck in what I thought would work, and it was lovely. So we, all through our lives, we change. Sometimes we read an instruction manual. Sometimes we don't bother. We just have a go at seeing if it'll work. There's lots of different things. So I would say, as adults, we do it all the time. There's no harm in sometimes rote learning, sometimes association, sometimes drawing a picture and trying to remember it in a visual way. No, I think they're all valuable. What we get clever at as adults is picking the correct techniques so we're more likely to succeed. But we only know that through trial and error.
Okay, I think we have a few minutes for another couple of questions to you. So how to develop speaking and writing in children who practice an hour of English a week at school?
That's exactly what I taught. So first of all, I think homework's important. Secondly, if you can, if the students can afford it or if the school can supply it, definitely give them the option to do any online activities. Most online activities that students do the teacher is really well set up to see how long students spent on the activity, how well they've done on the activity, and lots and lots and lots of students, assuming you have the internet, will be gaming and going online anyway. If not, I think there is nothing wrong. One of the things you can find is, I don't know how Post-its, I mean, I know that's a brand name, but the little sticky squares, even if you don't have a lot of resources, give the students some sticky squares to make their own kind of noughts and crosses boards. That's 9 squares, 3 by 3. They write the key words on it, and then they either have to mix them up and put them so that maybe the top 3 words are clothing, the next 3 words are animals, the bottom 3 words are food. Then you say to them, okay, now mix them up and do them alphabetically. Now pick 3 and make a sentence. You can do simple things like that that really help students to practice English, and they cost next to nothing.
And the last, I think, I'm afraid it will be the last question you'll be able to answer as we're coming close to the finishing time. Could you recommend activities with songs?
Oh, golly. Pearson have put out a Pearson dictionary with songs by Carol Graham. I believe it's still in the catalogue. There are so many songs there, but don't forget the old favourites that we all grew up. The tune to "Oh MacDonald Had a Farm," the tune to "Row, Row, Row Your Boat." There's all sorts of things, just change the words. And as teachers, we're always really making up little rhymes and songs, you know. So put your book in your bag. Isn't revelational, but it's exciting. But Pearson Longman Children's Picture Dictionary has songs and chants by Carol Graham, and lots of them are really good. But lots of courses, like the one that's on screen, include lots of songs as well. So you can sing the song, you can play the tune, you can miss out words, you can get the students, as you go around, to sing a different verse or a different line each. And don't forget some of the really simple songs, which you can find on YouTube. There are some very, very nice songs there that are quite simple as well.
All right. I'm afraid we need to finish here. I think we're having a lovely conversation. 700 odd people plus Carol, but we need to be closing now. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. If anybody would like to join us, if you're on LinkedIn, I am the only Carol Higho. I'm happy to be linked into on LinkedIn. If you want to find any of the websites, I apologise if you didn't see it on the slide. Just drop me a line. I absolutely don't mind. It's been an absolute privilege to talk to you all today. I can only thank you so very much for giving your time up to be there. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you. I hope you found it interesting. Joanna, thank you for emceeing. That's been great. And I wish you all a very good day or a good night, depending on where in the world you are.
Yes, exactly. So I'm joining Carol with that. Thank you very much, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you all back online soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.